Hi grade 7 students. Today what we're going to do is we're going to look at percents. So we're starting with percents here, and what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and show you how to move from a percent to a fraction, and also from a percent to a decimal, and also the backward situation. Go from decimals back to percent and fractions back to percent, and while we're at it we might as well show you how to go from fractions to decimals. So we want to learn how to take a percent and mix it between different forms like a fraction and decimal. So let's start us off here with the first percent. Okay, so the first percent here is 60%, and we want to write it as a fraction. So I'm going to underline the word fraction. That's the key idea here. We're trying to write 60% as a fraction. Now the first thing that's really key is I'm hoping you recognize that percent means out of 100. Okay, I'm going to put some exclamation marks here because this is really important. I want you to always remember when you say I got 60% on a test, that's what you would have scored. You would have got 60 on that test if there was 100 marks available. That's what percent means. It puts everything out of 100. So if I was writing it as a fraction, the fact that I know this percent sign means out of 100, I know that as a fraction I can write this as 60 out of, you put the line straight across, out of 100. We have just written 60% as a fraction, 60 over 100. Now there's a key phrase here. We better take some time, make sure that we understand it. It says in lowest terms. So this fraction, if I can divide the top and bottom by the same number, it is not in lowest terms. So I need to keep reducing this fraction until I can no longer divide it by anything but the number 1. So the first thing I'd look at here is my divisibility rules. Hey, both numbers end in a 0. So I know right away I can divide the top and the bottom by 10. So this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to reduce this down to its lowest terms. So 60 divided by 10 leaves me with 6. 100 divided by 10 leaves me with 10. Now I ask myself, well, is there another number that I can divide the top and bottom by? You can see, hey, both even. I can divide the top and bottom by 2. So I end up getting 6 divided by 2 is 3. 10 divided by 2 is 5. I look at this, I can't divide 5 by 3, so I can pretty safely say 60% written as a fraction is equal to 3/5. So 60% is the same as 3/5 as a fraction. And that's in terms. Next question. My computer doesn't write 2/5 very well, so whenever you see that like 2 with the slash and the 5, I just mean it to be 2 over 5. We're supposed to write this as a decimal and as a percent. Let's start by writing it as a percent. Just a reminder, percent means out of 100. So in this case, I want to write this as a fraction, but I want 100 to be on the bottom. So I ask myself, well, 5 is smaller than 100, so what number, when I times it to 5, gives me 100? And in this case, 5 times 20 gives me 100. So therefore, I can do the same thing to keep this an equivalent relationship. I'm going to have to multiply the top by 20 as well. So 2 times 20 gives me 40. So 2/5 is equal to 40 over 100. So I have now noticed that 2/5 is the same as what? 40 out of 100, which I can write as 40%. Now next thing, they ask us to write this as a decimal. Well, here's the key thing with decimal. So remember, in front of the decimal place, this is our ones value. behind the decimal place, this is our tenths. The next one is hundredths. Now these words are really, really important. Tenths mean how much I have out of 10. Hundredths mean how much I have out of 100. Well, percent just means out of 100. You can see hundredths place and percent basically mean the same thing. So 40% means 40 out of 100. So this is a decimal. I would just put 40 and I'd make sure the final digit ends, in this case is 0, ends on the hundredth spot. So this would be 40 hundredths, or 40 out of 100. And I would just fill the ones with a 0 here. So you can see, what is 2/5 as a percent? It's 40%, and that's also equal to 0.40, or you could write this, you don't need to add the zeros at the end, 0.4. It's the same as 4/10. Let's do one more. 76% as a decimal. So 76% means 76 out of 100. Well, just a reminder, here is our tenths, here is our hundredths. So this is the same as 76 hundredths. Just to show you one other thing, let's say, for example, you had 8%. How would you write that as a decimal? Well, that means 8 out of 100. So it would be 0 decimal, here's tenths, here's hundredths. So the 8 would actually go in the hundredths spot. So hundredths, and you would fill the tenths with a 0. So I hope this kind of is enough to get you going as you start working on questions on this unit. Have a good one.